Hello, my name is Rick Stritzinger. Many of you know me as Mr. Stritz or Stritz, and many weekends I can be found in one of the kitchens at Goose Pond or Camp Akahila. I am also your council commissioner. So what I am doing today, what I was asked to do today, is talk to you about menu planning, a little bit about sanitation, and at the very end, we are going to actually make a Dutch oven meal. So let me start with menu planning. So there are several things that you need to start planning a menu. And these are things that need to be done before you even get to that menu planning meeting where you make up your meals. So the first part, and there are several items that we need to go through before we get to the menu. So the first is facilities and outings. So what type of camping are you doing? You need to know this. Are you doing a backpacking trek on the trails? Are you staying in a Boy Scout camp where facilities are everywhere to be found? You're going to a state park or another regular camp that has many facilities for you to use also? Or are you doing somewhere in the middle where you might have to just hike in 100, 200 yards? And we're going to talk about the different things you would need for each of these outings. What is available and allowed? You need to know that before you get to your meeting. Are you allowed open fires? And that's what you plan to cook on, and then you get there and find out no open fires, whether it's a facility rule or it's a burning ban. You need to know that before you get to go there, because you need to know whether to have your stoves ready for you or you're cooking on the fire. What activities are you doing on the outing? We talked about the backpack trek. So what activities? You're not going to have a lot of time. You're not going to have a lot of space to carry extra stuff. If you're going to a state park, obviously the trailer you can take, sky's the limit. You're just barely off the field to get your stuff out of the trailer. Or the other camping we talked about, we got to hike in 100, 200 yards, maybe a modified plan of what you want to carry into that campsite. So next is the planning and limitations. Budget. Where is this budget coming from? Is it coming from the unit, the committee? Are you voting on a budget? You need to know this number before you start planning. It's bad to plan a menu and then figure out the budget after the menu is planned, and then you find out it could be $50 or more per person, and somebody could say, I just can't afford that. Then they back out of the camping trip, and you actually, if you bought the food, you might be stuck with it. So you need to know the budget ahead of time, wherever that comes from. So someone in your group needs to find out what the budget is for this outing. Allergies. Who in your group may have allergies to gluten, soy, peanut butter, pork, whatever it might be, and there are many out there, because these people, these scouts or adults, have to eat also. And there's nothing worse than that scout sitting down for a meal and they're gluten-free, and your dinner that night was pasta and meatballs. Pasta is gluten, and there's breadcrumbs in the meatballs. They can't eat anything. The only thing they could find, they went to the trailer, they found a box of cornflakes, and they had a bowl of cereal for dinner. That's not fair to them. So you need to plan accordingly to what your allergies might be in the group, in your outing, and prepare for them also so they have something to eat. And the last part is likes and dislikes. I feel this is not as important because when you're out and about, it's time to try something new. Maybe you don't think you like it and you try it and you really like it. So it's a good time to try new things. I know there's some units that I know of at Polar Bear, they will actually bring in game and cook it in Dutch ovens, and then everybody gets to try it. That's a nice way to try things. Now, if the entire group says we don't like liver, obviously you're not going to make liver for dinner that night or something of that sort. But likes and dislikes to me are not as important. Try something new, you might like it. Now down to the actual planning of your menu, what you need to know. How many meals are you going to prepare on this outing? So what do you need to know? How many breakfast you're going to have, how many lunch, how many dinner, and how many Cracker Barrels you might need for this outing. Now you're going to sit down and plan the menu. So several things you might need before you sit down to plan that menu. I recommend having some kind of menu grid or outline for your meals. This is something I put together. It might be hard to read on there, okay? This is just days, dinners for me, because it's something I was working on. But the 3 rows could be breakfast, lunch, dinner, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and write them out that way. You have a grid to plan on for what you're doing for your meals. You need that plan or something to write on. Also, then to go with that, you need a shopping list. Again, this is what I make up. It's just a printed sheet in Excel, and you can write your actual shopping list onto the sheet, so whoever is doing your shopping knows that. So then some of the responsibilities, and you need a responsibility grid for, similar to what I had there, for your jobs at the meal time. And some of those are water, but you might need to know water before you get there. Because what if you go to a place and it's bring your own water, and then you get there, you have no water, somebody's running to a store and buying gallons of water? Know that ahead of time, okay? If you have potable water at the facility that you just fill in coolers and bring it back to your campsite, or you're in a cabin that has water, you need to know that ahead of time, that it's potable and usable. And then from that point, if it is a potable source of water on your meal plan, you will put who's going to run for that water daily or meal. So somebody may have to run every meal to make sure you have clean water for every meal. That's going to be one item on that list. Cooking, who is doing the cooking that meal? It's only for one meal. Serving, who's serving at that meal. Cleaning, how are you cleaning up after you eat? Are you doing a full clean that the person does mess kits, dishes, pots, pans, everything? I know we don't do it that way. Everybody's responsible for their own mess kit. What the cleaning crew is responsible for is the pots, pans, cooking utensils, things that were used for the actual cooking is what they are cleaning. And then finally, and one of the most important, is garbage removal. Who is removing that garbage after every meal? And actually the most important is who's removing all garbage after dinner or Cracker Barrel, so nothing is left in camp. And you may think, well, there's no bears in this area, so I'm not so worried about it, but there's critters. Raccoons can make a bigger mess than bears ever could. Bears are dangerous, raccoons are messy, and you've got a huge mess to clean up in the morning. So make sure everything is clean, tidy, and thrown away, and that needs to be on your grid. Then we're going to talk about sanitation and cleaning, okay? There's pre-meal sanitation. Yes, before the meal, things need to be clean, neat, and ready. So everybody that's on the cooking crew needs to wash their hands thoroughly, and as we all know now, with everything going on, 20 seconds singing happy birthday twice is what you need to do in the hottest water and soap that you can take onto your hands to clean your hands thoroughly before you start cooking. Also, your cooking area needs to be cleaned and sanitized. If you're using a table and maybe it sat there all day from breakfast or lunch and it needs to be cleaned off, have a spray sanitizer, spray down the table, wipe it, clean it, and everything else. Make sure it's all clean. Also then have some hot water that you can continually wash your hands during cooking, because there should be no cross-contamination. You need, if you touch raw meat and vegetables in between, you need to wash your hands. Or even going from meat to meat, you need to wash your hands in between. Also, your utensils need to be washed in between those. If you're cutting chicken and then you're going to a vegetable, that knife needs to be cleaned before you use it. So there's sanitation all through meal prep and meal time. If you're doing ready-to-eat foods, it's highly recommended you have gloves on and a hat when you're cooking. A hat will keep hair out of food and so on. You should have a hat on. Finally, you're done eating, and it's time to clean up the dishes. And what do you need for that? And as scouts, I think we know mostly what we need, but I'm going to go through it anyway for the items that we need for cleaning up after we eat. So we're going to start with 3 bins, okay? So, and I don't have 3 bins here. I would have it set up for you. I'm not able to get anywhere to get anything, and I'm in my home trying to do the best I can to show you and talk to you about proper cleaning, menu planning, and so on. So in these 3 bins, the first one is going to be hot soapy water, and it's got to be the hottest that your hands could take, because if you ever try to clean something greasy in cold water, I don't care how much soap you're going to put in that pan, you're not going to get that greasy bacon pan clean. It has to be hot, soapy water, a scrub brush, a scrub pad, a scrubbing cloth of some sort. Whatever you have to clean is what you need in that hot soapy water. The second bin is your rinse water. Again, this should be as hot as you can take it to rinse that off, to make sure all the soap is removed from there, because you don't want any soap left on your dishes. And then your third pan is your sanitizing. Now think what temperature that. I just said you need 2 bins of hot water. And you may say, well, I need hot water for my sanitizing. No, you don't want hot water for your sanitizing for 2 reasons. Or really one main reason, I'm sorry there. Chlorine or Clorox, bleach, whatever you want to call it, evaporates at 77 degrees, okay? So in that water, you're going to have your water for sanitizing with a couple lids or a lid full of bleach into your water for sanitizing. If that water is above 77, that bleach evaporates into the air, it's gone, and you're just really doing another cold water rinse on your dishes, or hot water rinse because you're using hot water. So you want to use anything 77 degrees and below. So it's going to be a little cool to the touch for that water, and you have to let your dishes soak in there for just a minute or so the bleach gets around and into everything, okay? If you're using sanitizing tablets, same thing. And you could use either. I know most units do like the bleach because it's cheap, it's easy to get hold of, and it's inexpensive. Then it comes to drying the dishes. You don't want to towel dry, because if you're using used towels, they do harbor bacteria and pathogens that you don't want in there. So you're going to let them air dry. So stand them up, let them drain, let them air dry. That is the safest and most cleanest way to let your dishes dry. Unless you're using clean paper towels for all your dishes, and that's a real waste of paper towels and resources, and I don't recommend that you do that. So let them air dry, and then you're going to properly put them away. So now I'm going to take a minute to get ready, and we are actually going to make a meal now to talk about what we've done here and how to do it. Thank you. Hello, I'm back again. I said I would only take a minute or so to get ready for the prepping of the meal and making of the meal. So what did I do? As we talked about sanitation, I went and got all of my Order of the Arrow. I am on the food committee for the Order of the Arrow. So I have my Order of the Arrow hat on so I don't get any hair in the food. Even though I don't have any hair, a hat should be worn. I have my apron on so I keep my uniform clean, and you're not getting food, grease, splatter onto your uniform or whatever clothes you happen to have on. So now we're going to talk about what you need to make beef stew. Okay, now we're going to talk about what is needed as far as ingredients and utensils for making our meal tonight. And what are we making? Beef stew and dumplings. Okay, I have everything on this table that we need for that meal. So we're going to start with utensils first as I stand back at the table here, and you can see over to the right is a large stainless steel bowl. It could be any material bowl, but you do need a large bowl. Then moving in, you need a good cutting board. I like the plastic ones because I can soak them, I can bleach them, and they come really clean. A wooden one you can't soak in bleach. It would end up cracking on you. So a good plastic cutting board is essential. Knives, I have on the table there my good French knife. I don't let many people use that. It is an extremely good knife. It is extremely sharp, and that's what I like. And then in the front there is a smaller paring knife for your smaller cuts, like the diced onions you see there. And then in the front of the table, I have other utensils that you're going to need to prepare this meal. There is a peeler, as you can see there on the right. That peeler, you can peel or not peel your carrots and potatoes. And if you don't peel them, that is fine. But you need to scrub them well so you clean off the skins of all dirt and everything that would be on them. Then there's a whisk to mix the flour and items into the stainless steel bowl. Tongs for turning the meat in the flour and help with cooking. And then as you'll see there, I have two wooden utensils, a spoon and a spatula that are wooden. When cooking in Dutch ovens, I prefer using wooden utensils rather than the metal. Sometimes I find the metal utensils leave a tinny taste in the food when you're scraping on the bottom of the pan, and that is only sometimes and depending on the pan. But to take care of that, I just use wooden utensils. Now we are going to talk about the recipe. Here's the recipe. And if there's a way that this can be linked to the video, and when I send this in, if they tell me there is a way, I will send them the recipe itself that it can be linked to it. But otherwise, here's a pretty good shot of it, and you could freeze frame it and download it if you wish. But now we're going to talk about what are the ingredients on and in the beef stew. And we're going to start at the back of the table here. So your vegetables are going to be a nice sweet diced onion, a medium to large diced onion, carrots, potatoes, again, peeled or unpeeled, that is up to you. Then you have your cubed beef in the front. And your cubed beef, you can buy it already pre-cubed, or you can get a chuck roast, cut your own cubes if you wish, or any piece of beef you want to cut your cubes into. You are going to need some vegetable oil for the Dutch oven, and I like a half a stick of butter just for flavor, and you do not need that butter, but I like it. And then as you can see on that plate, I have salt, pepper, garlic powder, flour, and an envelope of French onion soup mix. We're going to get back to the Bisquick. You're going to need a powdered gravy mix that makes 2 cups or 2 1-cup packs, a quart of beef broth, a small can of tomatoes, and then we're making beef stew and dumplings. So I'm going to end up using Bisquick today and mix up the dumpling recipe that's on the box. Otherwise, what I would recommend when you are out camping is to buy the little canned biscuits, the smaller round ones, and you just lay them on top. And we'll talk about that later when we get there. But they were not available in the store, so I got the Bisquick instead to make dumplings that way. So that is all the ingredients that you will need to make your beef stew. Let's stand back one more minute so you can get a good look at what is on that table, and you will need. So before we move into the kitchen, because I'm going to take another 30-second break to move from the dining room into the kitchen, but what I'm going to do here, just to show you, you are actually going to take your plate of seasonings minus the butter and the French onion. You're going to put it into the bowl. Make sure you get everything off. Grab your whisk and whisk. Okay? Put your whisk down. You are then going to take your beef cubes into the flour, and you are going to flour your beef cubes just so they are ready. And that's going to help thicken and brown your beef, okay? That's all you're going to do is rotate them till they're all evenly coated with the flour, as I'm doing here. And I have gloves on. That's the other thing I did go and get, is because I always have gloves here because of my job. And actually, my wife is a nurse, so she has gloves here. So we always have gloves in the house. And if you're making something messy, it's always nice to have gloves on. So that is nice, evenly coated with the flour and the seasonings, all ready to go. Now I'm going to move into the kitchen, so just give me a brief break again. Thank you. Okay, I'm back again. And as you can see here, inside the Dutch oven, I have the butter and about 2 tablespoons of oil in there, and it is frothing up really nice. It's at a good steady heat. And what we're going to do is we are going to take our beef that has been floured, and you're only going to take and cover the bottom of the pan. You don't want to pile it in there because you want it to brown nicely. And if you put it into the pan and not have them on separate rows, it's just going to basically boil in there, and we don't want that. At this point, we want to cook the beef off to get a nice brown crust on it. For flavor, brown is flavor. Always remember that. So that's about what you want on the bottom. Single layer, and let it cook. Remember, in that flour was your salt, pepper, and garlic for seasoning. And we're going to add other seasonings later, as you see. So that's what you want, is your nice, good simmer going on in there. And you can use your wooden spoon or your spatula. And at this point, you can use your tongs to turn. But I actually have with me a different type of tong. got the rubber tip so I'm not into the meat with the metal. As I said, I don't like metal on metal. Just something I don't like. You see if you can hear that nice sizzle. That's what you want. Just sizzling away. Let it go a little bit until it gets a little brown. It's just going to take a minute or two on one side to brown. You can check it. It's not ready to flip yet. Still not ready. Make sure they're broken apart so the flour's not sticking to each other. You want nice separate pieces of meat. Now you're getting that real sizzle in there. And then start turning your meat. Start getting nice brown on it. You can see. Got that nice golden. Hard to cook with one hand. Pan's moving all over on the stove. Okay, I'm going to cut the camera for a minute, and then we'll be back again when I'm ready for the next step. Okay, so I'm back again. And see how the nice brown color is on that beef? That's what you're looking for. And it actually took me 2 different layers to do it. So it took 2 times. 2 layers, and so now we're going to remove the beef from the pan, getting off the flame so it's not spattering all over for a minute. Put it back on the plate. Okay, that's good. Got it out. So what are we going to do now? We're going to do up some onions and deglaze the pan. So to do the onions, we're going to take them from here. It's getting tricky with one hand, one camera. So all that's going in the pan are those onions. I did it. And none went on the floor, which is a good thing. So you're just going to take these and you're going to saute them until they're kind of translucent in color, which is not going to take long because this is on pretty good heat. At this point, we can actually start to turn the heat down a little bit. We're going to turn it down to a little bit of more of a medium heat. You can see where it's at right now. Let's turn your down to a medium. Right about there should be pretty good. Bring you back. All that onion in there is bringing up all that goodness off the bottom of the pan, all your browning, your brown flour and brown meat flavor that was stuck to the bottom of the pan. And we're going to do a little bit more because I'm going to add liquid to it after this. So the onions get pretty translucent, nice and soft as they are now. You can see they cooked up pretty nice. You can let them go another minute or so, but it doesn't matter at this point because they're all got a little bit of cook and they're pulled off. So you may say, why am I going to add tomatoes? Because most beef stew probably doesn't have tomatoes. And that's just a small can of diced tomatoes. Diced tomato is an acid. It's a flavor enhancer. So it's actually going to bring the flavor out of all your food. And the tomatoes will cook in and you really won't even know they're there. You know, the color of the stew might be a little more red than you're used to, but it's going to add a little great flavor. So from there, now you're going to add the beef broth, which I have here. And you're going to use most of this, if not all of it, depending. Because you got to fit everything in this pan, don't forget. So you may not want... Okay, so everything's in there. Let's give it a good stir. Make sure everything's off the bottom. Nice, beautiful color you have there. See that? Then the last item we're going to add to the broth at this time is the French onion soup mix. The Lipton's that you make a dip with or your French onion soup. So that pack went in. That's added flavor because there's a little bit of beef broth in there, plus the onion flavor, and adds great flavor. So you're going to bring this up to a simmer. So if you're doing this with your charcoal, you'd need your light charcoal, not heavy charcoal on top and bottom, just a little bit lighter. So all you want it to do is simmer. So in this pan now, you're going to put the beef back. And very carefully, I'm going to try to do it with one hand without making a mess all over my kitchen. So the beef is going to dump in. You want all the juices and everything from the cooking process that you just did are going into that pan. Okay, stir it around. Now, doing this at home, you would let it simmer for an hour now. Okay, that's what it needs to do, is simmer for a good hour to tenderize up that beef. It'll be mostly tender at the end of that hour, and that's when we will add the rest of the ingredients. So for now, I'm going to put the lid on this, let it simmer for an hour, and I will see you in 1 hour, but in magic camera time, it'll only be a few seconds. Thank you. Hello, it's me again. Since we have an hour as we're waiting for the stew to simmer before we add the vegetables, I thought maybe I'll give you some more menu ideas and easy things that you can make while on an outing. So the first two are pretty easy, and I think most of you have already done these, are your foil packs. But foil packs can be done for any meal, not just lunch or dinner. Think outside the box, maybe do a breakfast foil pack. And then eggs in a bag, omelet in a bag is very easy. Also, easy cleanup, especially for a Sunday morning breakfast where you are cleaning up camp. You need to get out camp relatively early, and it is easy cleanup, and then you have hot water to clean with when you're finished. And then there is what I call dump pot stew or soup. We used to do it, and we would read the story of stone soup, which is very similar. Everybody brings something to put into that pot and make it into a stew or soup. And generally what everybody brings is some kind of canned vegetable, fresh vegetable, and you're going to put it inside that pot. But then somebody within the unit is tasked to bring the meat that goes in there and broth that goes with that meat. And you would brown the meat, put the broth in, and then add all your vegetables. And if you're doing canned vegetables, open the lid, juice and all goes in. Makes a great pot of soup. We've done this many times. And also, what we like to add to that at the end is, if it's a big pot, add a whole pound of macaroni, pasta of your choice, anything you like. Make it hearty. A good solid soup, especially on a cold night, is very good. So add some pasta to it, and it's as simple as elbows or ziti or anything that you like pasta-wise into that. So that makes a simple meal that's quick and easy to cook. And then let's talk a little bit about more Dutch oven items. I am not real versed on Dutch oven cooking. I am somewhat. I can do the basics. I know there are people out there that can do fantastic meals in Dutch oven. I am not one of those persons. I could do an okay meal in Dutch oven. I can cook you anything, but Dutch ovens are somewhat, for me, a little bit of a struggle. But in those Dutch ovens, we made the beef stew today. But you can change that up. Same exact recipe, changing the meat. So instead of the beef, you have a lot of people that don't like beef, you can change it to chicken. So you're going to get chicken breast or chicken thighs and get them boneless. You're going to brown them off the same way. And you're going to use chicken broth instead of the beef broth. And then you can omit the French onion soup if you want. You can leave it in. It really doesn't matter. But that is going to impart a little bit of a beef flavor if you leave that in. You can change it up to pork. Get a pork butt, cut that into cubes. Cook that off the same exact way. Use pork broth. You can use chicken broth with pork because they're pretty much interchangeable. So that would not be a problem to use a chicken broth with the pork to make a pork stew. Shepherd's pie, very simple to make in the Dutch oven. So you're going to do your onions and ground beef, brown them off in the bottom of the pan, add some broth and gravy mix to thicken it. I like to add peas and carrots. Most people like corn in it. Add some kind of vegetable into that meat mixture, and then you have mashed potatoes. The easiest thing to do on a camp out, take instant mashed potatoes, mix them up to the recipe, put them all over the top of the meat, put the lid on, a little bit of charcoal on top of that pan to brown off those potatoes, and you have a real nice shepherd's pie for that meal that night. That's real nice and filling also. Something I call lazy lasagna, crazy pasta, whatever you want to call it. Again, just ground beef, brown it off, your spaghetti sauce, have your pasta, Dump that into all of that. Add cheese, add ricotta if you want. Don't want, that's all up to you. Add onions, garlic, whatever you like into it. It's crazy pasta. Just put it in there. Cover it then with mozzarella cheese after your pasta's cooked. Put the lid back on, a little bit of charcoal, brown that cheese on top. Great meal again. Easy, simple. And that's in the Dutch oven. And then some dessert items that you can do in the Dutch oven is dump cakes. They're real easy. Put your pie filling in, your cake mix and butter on top of that. Put the lid on with your charcoal top and bottom. Cook it through. Can't get any easier than that. A variation of that dump cake is you would use 2 or 3 cans of fruit. Pie filling is ideal, is what you want for that. Put that in with fruit juice, whatever you like, similar to what the fruit is. So if it's apple, use apple juice. If it's blueberry, even use apple juice. Don't use an odd juice to take away the flavor of the original apple. It's pretty much neutral, and you can use that in any of them to thin out the fruit just a bit. Add some butter. Take your canned biscuits like we were going to use for the beef stew that I can't find because of what's going on. So use a dumpling mix, canned biscuits, whatever you like, all over the top of that. Charcoal top and bottom. And then you have fruit and dumplings. Excellent meal right there for dessert. A little bit of ice cream or whipped cream with that is even better. So that's just a couple little items to give you ideas what you can cook with while we're waiting for the stew to cook. So again, I will see you in a little bit. So here I am back again. What you want to do is make sure that the meat is fork tender. See how nice that's simmering away in there? It took a little over an hour for the meat to become nice and tender. So that's what you're going to do. You're just going to keep an eye on it to make sure it's tender. And at this point, we're going to just give it a little stir. And we are going to add the vegetables, the potatoes and the carrots, okay? And you can change this up a little bit if you want. If you wanted to add some corn, you can. Parsnips are also really good in this because they add a sweetness to it along with the carrots. So you can add other vegetables. So they are going to be carefully put into the pan as to not splash and burn. So we will be careful with this. And put in what fits. You may not end up putting them all in because it's what fits. And it looks like they all fit, so I had no trouble. So we're going to take our wooden spoon once again. Give it a nice little stir. Make sure everything is covered and submerged in the broth. See how good that looks already? We are then going to cover it once again with the lid. This is going to take at least 20 to 30 minutes for the potatoes and carrots to become fork tender and ready to eat. So again, I will see you back in about 20 to 30 minutes. Okay, so back once again. And the pot of stew is simmering nicely. The vegetables are all tender now. Now what you're going to do at this point with the gravy mix that we had, mix it to the package directions, which would probably be 2 cups of water. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to add it slowly, but you may not need all of it because it is just enough to thicken it. You don't want a heavy, thick gravy. You just want to thicken the broth a little bit. And I'm going to try to do this with the camera in one hand and start dropping the phone into the stew. So we're going to pour some in. About half of it at this point is all I want in there. Stir it to see how it thickens. And that is about good. That was probably a little bit more than half that I put in. And it'll even thicken more as it cooks. Now, the other thing at this point, if you have your canned biscuits, you're just going to ring them right around the top, making circles into the center. Cover it, and it's going to be about 20 minutes until they're done, and you'll let it simmer again. But since I couldn't find the biscuits, I mixed up the Bisquick recipe for dumplings, which was 2 cups of Bisquick mix and 2/3 cup of milk. And all we're going to do is spoon them on top of the mixture, put the lid back on. 20 minutes later, the stew will be ready. So you're going to take just a spoonful like this. This is going to be tricky. And just scoop it in. Okay? And you're going to do that till the top is filled. So I will see you a little bit when it's time to eat. Hope you're hungry. Okay, it is finally done. And here's what it looks like. And to serve it, you just need a spoon and maybe a ladle. A little extra juice on top. And it is ready.